In this video we're gonna set this. Okay, whenever the player, the player will lose health and it will goes to down and it will destroy itself. So we're gonna deal with this. Okay, so without further delay, let's dive into this topic. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna create an attack point to this enemy. Okay, so if we select the patrol enemy, we're gonna create an empty child game object and we're gonna place it over here. If we select the patrol enemy and if we select the attack animation clip over here, as you can see, and we're gonna call that function over here, we're gonna create an separate function and we're gonna make it public so we can call it from over here. You just have to go to left side, as you can see, add event. Okay, we're gonna add event and we're gonna call that function over here. Okay, so firstly we need to create an attack position. Okay, and we're gonna create circle around that attack position, and if that circle collide with our player, so player will take damage. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna create an empty child game object. Okay, so right click on enemy, okay, patrol enemy, and create an empty child game object. Name it something like attack point. Okay, I'm gonna name it attack point, something like that. I'm gonna drag it, select the move tool over here and drag it over here. Okay, and I'm gonna select in gizmo, so go to inspector, select any gizmos like that. I'm gonna select this one. So we're gonna create a circle around this attack point, and if that circle collide with the player will take damage. So what we're gonna do, firstly we're gonna go to patrol enemy. Okay, and gonna hit overrides and then apply all, so it will change in the prefab as well. So hit apply all. So what we're gonna need, we're gonna open up the patrol enemy script. Okay, so double click it to open up in Visual Studio. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna create. Okay, firstly we need that attack position. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna create an empty attack position. Okay, so what we before that we're gonna use this function. Okay, and we're gonna make a separate function and we're gonna make it public so we can call in the inspector. And you have to type void for function, and we're gonna call it something like attack, something like that, and first bracket and these curly brackets. Okay, so we're gonna call this function from animation event, so that's why we made it public. Okay, if you make it private or if you haven't assigned something like that, like void attack, so it will be marked as a private if you haven't assigned something like that. So we are making it public so we can call that this function through our animation event. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use this function. Okay, physics 2d, sorry, physics 2d. Okay, physics 2d dot overlap circle. Okay, physics 2d dot overlap circle. So basically this circle, this function will take the position from where you want to create the radius, and the second argument it will take the, sorry, for the first argument it will take the position from where you want to create the circle, and the second parameter it will take the radius of that circle you want to create. So we need to specify the radius. Okay, we're gonna call it something like attack radius, and the third argument it will take the layer, which layer actually you want to target. So we have to pass the layer mask, and layer mask we're gonna choose our player, we're gonna attack the player. Okay, that's why. So before then I'm gonna comment it for now, and we're gonna assign those variables into top. Okay, so firstly we're gonna create that position. Okay, we need that position, so we're gonna make it public and transform basically means position, and we're gonna call it attack point. Okay, attack point. What we're gonna do, we're gonna drag that attack point to this attack point slot or field, so we will have the attack point. And and what we need the layer mask, actually which layer actually we want to target. So we're gonna make it public to adjust in the inspector. We're gonna select our player layer. Okay, and that will be layer mask, and I'm gonna call it something like, you can call it something like player layer or layer. Okay, so I'm gonna call it layer. Okay, and we need to specify the radius of that attack point. Okay, we also need to specify the radius, so we're gonna make it public to say adjust in the inspector, and the type will be float, and we're gonna call it something like attack. Okay, attack radius. By default you can set any value. Okay, by default you can set any value, but I'm gonna set 0.5f, less something like that. Okay, control as on your keyboard to save this. Okay, control as on your keyboard to save this. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to attack function, okay, and we're gonna use this physics 2d dot overlap circle. So this function will take the position from where you want to create, okay, as a first argument. So we're gonna pass the attack point, okay, sorry, attack point dot position, and the second parameter, it will take the radius. So we have assigned it our attack radius 0.5 by default, but we can adjust in the inspector, so that's why we made it public. So we're gonna pass as a second parameter, which is attack radius, sorry, attack point, attack radius, and the third argument, it will take the layer mask, basically which layer you want to target. So we're gonna target the player layer. As you can see, we have assigned it layer, and we're gonna choose player layer in the inspector, okay. So we're gonna pass the layer over here, and we're gonna assign our player layer, okay, in the inspector. So this function over here, physics 2d dot overlap circle, okay, this function will be true or false. If the circle is colliding with our player layer, so this function will be true, else this function will be false. If the circle is not colliding with our player layer, so this function will be false. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna put it into a variable, this function, okay, we're gonna put it into a collided 2d variable. So we're gonna make collided 2d, okay, and we're gonna call it something like hit info or hit something like that, and equal to this. So basically, if the circle is colliding with our player layer, so this function will be true, so the hit over here will be true. And if the circle is not colliding with our player layer, so this function will be false, so the hit over here will be false. So if the hit is true, if the circle is colliding with our player layer, so what we're gonna do, the player will take damage. But before that, we're gonna debug if it's working or not. So we're gonna type if hit is true, basically if the circle is colliding with the enemy layer, oh sorry, player layer, if the circle is colliding with our player layer, basically hits is, so hit will becomes true. And if hit is true, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out the name what we hit, okay, what we hit. Obviously we're gonna hit the player, because we will assign our layer mask as a player layer. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna type debug, okay, firstly we're gonna debug.log, we're gonna print out the name what we hit. So something like we're gonna call enemy, okay, enemy, sorry, enemy hit, and plus we're gonna print out the name. Firstly we have to go to hit, we're gonna extract info. We can extract info by going to this hit, okay, like name, transform, tag. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna extract the name, okay. So firstly we are going to hit what we hit, and going to that game object transform, and then we're just printing out the name. Sorry, I just spell it over here wrong, okay, transform dot name, okay, name, and end up with semicolon. So whenever we call this function, okay, over here as you can see, we are not calling this function, okay. So we're gonna call this function via our animation event, okay. We're gonna call this function through our attack animation, okay. So if this function get called, so what this function will do, firstly it will check if, firstly the circle will check if the circle is colliding with the player layer or not. If it's colliding with player layer, so this function will be true, so the hits over here will be true. If hit is true, so what we are doing, we just printing out the name what we hit. As you can see, firstly we just just saying message enemy hit, and we just plus the name what we hit. Firstly we are going to hit, and just whatever game object we hit, we're going to that game object transform, and just extracting the name, as you can see. So control as on your keyboard, we're gonna call this function via our animation event, okay. So control as on your keyboard, and head again to unity, okay, head again to unity, and assign those attack point. Firstly we need to assign the attack point, okay, we need to assign the attack point, okay. And we also gonna set our layer marks to as a player layer. Before that you have to select the player if it's if you have assigned the player as a player layer or not. So what we're gonna do, so if we select, as you can see, attack point which says none transform, so what we need to drag the attack point into that field. Now we have the attack point, and we're gonna choose layer as a player layer, okay, player layer. Before that you have to make sure if you have assigned the player as a player layer or not. So what you have to do, you just have to go to inspector in the right, as you can see layer, which is selected player. Okay, it will be like default. Okay, it will be selected default. So what we need to click on that and add layer. Okay, and the name over here player, and go again to that game object player. Okay, and assign that layer to as a player layer. Okay, after doing this, hit overrides and apply all. Okay, apply all. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go back to player layer once, sorry, petrol enemy once again, and we're gonna choose layer to our player. So we only gonna target the player layer, and we also need to call that function. Okay, so we're gonna call it that function, our attack animation clip. So select the attack, select firstly the petrol enemy, and go to petrol enemy attack animation. We're gonna call from here, I guess. So we're gonna add an event over here, add event. So what we need to go to petrol enemy script and methods, basically function, and we have created this attack function. As you can see, we made it public, so that's why we are able to see over here. If you didn't make it private or sorry, public, or if you haven't assigned that as a public, so you won't able to see that function over here. So make sure you made it public. Okay, so we're gonna select this function. So as you can see, we are not able to see the circle. Okay, we are not able to see the circle. So what we need to use on draw gizmo selected function. Basically that is inbuilt function of Unity. So what we need to go back to script once again. Okay, once again, and we're gonna use the on draw gizmo selected function. You have to type the same name as it is the function. Okay, or if it will not work. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to down, and we're gonna draw. Okay, gizmos. Okay, oh, sorry, I name it wrong. So gizmos. Okay, gizmos dot draw where sphere. We have to use this function. Okay, so this function will take the position from where you want to create the circle, and the second parameter, you have to assign the radius of that circle. So we're gonna create the circle from our attack point. Okay, position, and we're gonna specify, we have already specified the radius. As you can see, attack radius by default we have selected 0.5 unit. So it will create from our attack position with 0.5 unit attack radius or radius. Okay, so we're gonna pass the attack radius. Okay, attack radius as a second parameter. So this will throw us an error if you haven't dragged the attack point to the attack point slot. Okay, okay, so what we need to check if we have assigned it or not. Basically if we have dragged the attack point to attack point position, the basically this empty field of attack point. Okay, as you seen, we have dragged the attack point to attack point position. But if you haven't assigned it, okay, if you haven't assigned it over here, as you can see, this function will try to find the attack point dot position. As you can see, it will try to find attack point, but it wouldn't able to get the attack point. So that's why it will throw us an error. So what we need before we create the circle, okay, we need to check if we have dragged the attack point to attack point slot or not. Basically if we have assigned it or not. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna check if attack point, okay, attack point is equals, sorry, if attack point, okay, if attack point is equals to null. Okay, if attack points equals to none, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna return. Basically if we haven't assigned it the attack point, basically attack point slot is empty. Basically attack point is equals to null. Basically it's empty. If it's empty, then we are just returning. We're not gonna call this line of code, as you can see. So we will avoid the error. So it will not create the circle till we assign the attack point to, or if we drag the attack point to attack point slot. Okay, I hope you get the idea. So control S on your keyboard to save this and go again to Unity. So what we're gonna do, we can specify, to compile, and you will able to see that. Okay, see that, just wait for to compile. just wait for to compile. If we select the petrol enemy, as you can see, if it's created, so we're gonna select the attack animation clip. Okay, so select the petrol enemy first and select the attack animation clip. So over here, so we're gonna adjust the radius around the sword. As you can see, we need to adjust the radius, so we're gonna increase the radius. As you can see, I guess it's fine now, it's fine. So 1.2, 1.2, I guess it's fine. So now what we have to do, we have to override and then apply all to change in the prefab as well with this attachments. Okay, so if we now hit play, okay, if we now hit play, if we select the console, okay, and if we hit play, if the player gets near, so to enemy, so enemy will attack, and from that attack animation, we calling that attack function. Okay, an attack function will check if the circle is colliding with the player layer or not. If it's colliding with the player layer, so it will print out the name of the player. Okay, so as you can see, enemy hit player. So if we go back to again script, as you can see, enemy hit, and we just printing out the name what we hit. As you can see, firstly we are going to hit and then transform, and the name we are printing out. So what we're gonna do, instead of printing out the name, we're gonna take damage. Okay, we're gonna take damage. So we need to create a take damage function to our player. So firstly we have to give health to our player. Okay, so if we just unhit play once again to unhit, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to player. Okay, or go to player, we're gonna open up the player health script. Over here, as you can see, we have created the take damage function. Whenever the take damage function get called, we just subtracting from our max health by 1 unit. As a damage parameter, we have passed 1. Okay, so that's why if we call the first time, so max health minus equal 1, so max health by default we set 5, so 5 minus 1 will be 4 if we call the first time. So if we call the first time, so the max health will go to 4. Okay, if we call second time, so 4 minus 1 will be 3. If we call third time, so 3 minus 1 will be 2. If we call fourth time, so 2 minus 1 will be 1. If we call fifth time, okay, so 1 minus 1 will be 0. So it will somehow hit will 0. So whenever it's becomes already 0, so we just returning, so this line won't get called anymore. Let's suppose we have 0 health, and if we call this function, so 0 minus 1 will be minus 1, which will go to negative. So that's why we just keep tracking the max health. If we already have, if the already max health becomes 0, we just returning, so this line after won't get called. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to petrol enemy script. Okay, we're gonna open that app, and we're gonna call that take damage function from here. Okay, whenever we hit the over here, as you can see, we just printing out the name what we hit. So what, instead of printing out the message, we're gonna the player gonna take damage. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna get the player health script. We firstly need to go to player. Okay, player health script, and by player health script we're gonna access this take damage function, and we made it public. As you can see, take damage function, and we made it public. So we're gonna call this function. Whenever we call this function, it will subtract from our max health by 1 unit, but means from player health it will subtract by 1 unit. So 1 unit, but you can pass as a damage parameter, as it's up to you. You can pass 2, 3 like that, but I'm gonna pass 1 to make simple. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, so we need to open up the petrol enemy script once again, and we're gonna call this function. Okay, we over here, instead of printing out the message, well, firstly we're gonna go to hit. Okay, and we're gonna try to get component this one. Okay, we will get the component player health. Okay, player health, and we're gonna play from player health, we're gonna call that take damage function, and we made it public. Okay, we made it public, so that's why we are able to call this function, and we have to pass the argument as a damage parameter. So it's up to you, whatever you can do, but I'm gonna subtract 1 unit from our max health, so that's why I'm gonna pass 1. So if you pass 2. Okay, and if you call the function take damage function, and as you know player health is max health is 5, so 5 minus 2 will be 3, so it will goes to 3, but we have passed 1, so it will be for 5 minus 1. If we call the first time, so 5 minus 1 will be 4, so the max health will go to 4. Okay, and we have to end up with semicolon as well, so I just forgot that. Okay, so firstly what obviously we're gonna hit the player, so what we are doing, we just getting the player health script. If we are hitting with player, okay, as you can see, as a layer we have selected our player layer. Okay, if the circle is colliding with player layer, so this hit function, the hit over here will be true. If it is true, then we just we just getting the player health script. Okay, we just going to player health script, and then we are calling that take damage function from their player health. Okay, so whenever we call the take damage function, it will subtract from our player health by 1 unit. As you can see, as a damage parameter I have passed 1. You can pass any value you like, so control S on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity. So whenever the player gets near to enemy, enemy will go to transition, attack transition. It will go to attack animation, and from attack animation we are calling that attack function. And attack function firstly check if the circle is colliding with the player layer or not. If it's colliding, then what we are doing, we calling this function from our player. Firstly we are going to taking the player health. Firstly we are getting the player health script. Okay, player health script component, and from there we just calling the take damage function, and we made it public. Okay, so that's why we are able to call, and as a damage parameter we have passed 1. Okay, so it will subtract from our max health by 1 unit. Okay, now if we play it, okay, and if we select the player, and if we see the max health over again, we will able to see whenever the enemy attacks. Okay, and if the circle collide with enemy player, okay, so it will call that function. So if we select the player, as you can see max health by default we set 5 units. So if we get near to our enemy, okay, as you can see max health become 4, and then as you can see the enemy is not flipping toward us. So what we need to do, we're gonna deal with this in the next video. Okay, for this now, so if you are new to my channel, then subscribe it for future tutorials. And if you want to support me, you can support me on patreon.com. and if you enjoyed this video, then like this and share it with your friends who just want to learn from Unity from the beginning. It will be helpful for him, okay, for him or her. Okay, so lastly, thanks for watching this video. I hope you get the idea. Okay, goodbye.